I love the shit out of this movie. I don't even have an opening joke, just I love the shit out of this movie. This is James Gunn at his meanest, bloodiest, and funniest. This is what the first Suicide Squad film was trying to be. Which does make me feel a little bad, because I always hear the first film was edited down, it wasn't quite what the director had in mind. It would be nice to see what the original idea was supposed to be. But I guess before I even go into this film, I should say what I thought of the first one, which this is a sequel, by the way. It's not a remake, even though they just put a "the" in front of the title. But I don't know, I think they did with the Fast and Furious as well. I don't get it, but whatever. The first film, I didn't hate like a lot of people. It was a film I liked more than I disliked. I like the style, I like a lot of the characters and the look, and the idea was kind of fun. But yes, every criticism that's brought against it is 100% right. It doesn't make any sense, all the characters are pretty stupid, but I thought it had just enough interesting and charming elements to it to make me glad I at least saw it. But this just takes so much of what the first film was trying to accomplish and really gives it this smart, strange, unique edge that is so funny, so unbelievably harsh. Like, this is a movie where you're actually like, wow, these are villains going into the scenario. They're actually sent in like the canaries before going into a coal mine. I mean, it's not something where they send them in to save the world. It's like, no, they really are kind of like the distraction or the ones to see if there's any danger there, so I like that. Everything that the first film was trying to really get across, I think, and whether it was ruined by editing or writing or whatever, is really fully realized here. And these characters, these villains, are legit really mean and kill a lot of people and do it in terrible ways, and the body count in this is quite impressive, not just from, bad guys that got killed, like, a lot of innocent people are like just slaughtered, and they're just killed in horrible ways that are also really funny. This really feels like a film written and directed by someone that was fired from his last job and was really pissed off and said, okay, I'm gonna do everything I can at this studio that I couldn't at the other. And right now, I am really a DC fan in terms of the movies, because they are really taking chances. They are really trying something different. They're letting people just kind of do what they want, whether for better or worse. Like Wonder Woman 1984 is bonkers, but there is something kind of fun to that. And with this, clearly this movie is bonkers as well, but it is just so imaginative and so wild, and plays with time a lot, plays with style, or different types of style, I should say, quite a bit. The characters, even though they're very awful people, are still likable. I mean, and just enough where you're like, yeah, okay, I am rooting for them, but man, these are bad dudes. These are like really bad people. And there's so many gory scenes that are very creative, and they happen at the right times you want them to happen. It doesn't feel gratuitous just for the sake of being gratuitous, although actually, yeah, it kind of does. This kind of does have an exploitation feel to it, and that seems to be like the new thing, is where before there was all these, it was always 80s retro and stuff like that, and it's still kind of going on, although now it seems to be going more towards 90s retro. But, you have stuff like Stranger Things, like everyone was trying to do that style. Now it seems like everyone's trying to do the exploitation film style that I guess you could argue like Quentin Tarantino tried to bring back, way back in the 90s there, but is becoming even more and more popular. But this, like I said, doesn't go full force into it. It has all these nods to it, but it is its own thing. It takes obviously from a lot of elements in DC and a lot of elements in exploitation films and even other comic book films. Like, you can tell there's some nods to Deadpool and like trauma films, how like Lloyd Kaufman has a brief cameo in this. I guess he has a cameo in a lot of James Gunn's movies. But yeah, it's this wonderful hodgepodge that the more I thought about it, kind of the better it got. Because as I was leaving the movie, there were a couple of moments where I was saying, well, that was good, but some of the motivations didn't always add up. And then when I really thought about what they introduced with the characters and they delve into with their past and what certain people mean to them, I did sort of go, oh, okay, actually some of the things they do at the end do add up. I understand why characters are making the choices they do, even if in the moment they might seem a little sporadic. When you really sit down and think about it, which are the kind of movies I like when I kind of have to think more about the character and I go, no, that does make sense. Actually, that was pretty smart. It is also, as you would imagine, very, very silly and ridiculous, but it is the best kind of insane because it has such a dark edge to it. It is such a dark action comedy that goes really, really weird and bizarre, and I love that. I feel like this film is also doing what Zack Snyder films are often trying to do. And like I said, Zack Snyder's really, he's kind of a big shot again. I mean, people really, I really like the Snyder cut of Justice League. I like that zombie movie that came out recently. But I feel so with the body count being so big in this movie, so many civilians dying and everything, I thought of Man of Steel and I was like, well, why did that bother me here but not here? Because these are villains. These are bad guys who are learning to maybe kind of become good guys. Even Amanda Waller in this movie is just like, she's practically her own unique villain. In the first film, again, I think you're supposed to root for her. Like, I don't even know. In this one, it's like, wow, she is doing some mean, awful stuff, but you're kind of like, man, that's a good villain. Like, it's a villain for the villain. And, you know, she's supposed to be on the hero side, but she's doing all these really mean, terrible things. And again, that's a good foil, but that's not even like the main foil. There's all these other characters they have to fight, and they're weird, and they're bizarre, and their powers are sometimes amazing, sometimes pathetic. And I got so into these characters that even when Harley Quinn showed up, I kind of forgot she was in the movie because I was getting so invested in everyone else. And there's a couple subplots like that where there's like these freedom fighters that are introduced very quickly, kind of disappear, and then when they come back again, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about them. But it's something you want to forget about, that when they return, you're like, oh, that's great, man, they work their way right back into there. So there's a lot of that going around. There's a lot of like that chaotic energy and playing around with when things are introduced to you. It's one of the few films that has this big opening and then does the sometime earlier that has been done to death, but this is a movie that plays around with time a lot in a fun way, and I feel like even with that Birds of Prey movie, which I did enjoy, I feel like this was taking elements of that as well and fine-tuning it and making it better. And again, with Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, I really enjoy her as Harley Quinn, and with most of these movies, that's one of the things you're going to see, because Margot Robbie is a great Harley Quinn, and that's the big character that everybody loves in these films. You know, even the bad films, they really like Harley Quinn. And in this one, she's still great, but she's not like the saving grace. She's not the, well, you go to see Harley Quinn. You legit really like all these characters, and when they surprise you or twists happen, they're legit surprising, and even when characters die, they're really, really surprising deaths. There's a lot of people I could not have predicted would die in this movie. With that said, without going into spoilers, there are some characters and actors in this film that have been advertised like they might be in a fair amount of this. Just be ready that maybe they're not. I won't say who or anything, but it's done very much as a trollish move, and I found that very funny, especially with the opening credits, when you see what happens to some of these characters, and then you see their names in the opening credits. That is very, very funny to me, but I can see people getting really upset about that, saying, hey, I want to see this character, this actor throughout the whole thing. There are some that does not happen with, but it's done in a very trollish way that this film makes very clear is intentional, and in my opinion is very funny, and keeps you a little bit more on edge about who's going to make it and who isn't. Because like I said, there are definitely characters I was not expecting were going to die in this that legit surprised me. And it often were very, very funny. But it also has a real... I don't want to say real heartfelt side, because it's not like that much of a tugging at your heart, because it is just so mean, but it does make you care just enough for these characters to, when you get to the third act, and, you know, they're going to have their arcs, they're going to have moments where they have to redeem themselves or work well off each other, you believe it, and you really, really buy it. This is such a fun, weird, gritty film that just entertained the hell out of me. If I had any problems with it, the only two I have is that it is a little long. I feel like there's one or two moments that could be trimmed down, but not too much. For the most part, it was really, really keeping me invested. And even though a lot of the motivations, this is number two, a lot of the motivations did end up working for me, there's still a couple that I'm like, wait, why would that character do this if they know this is gonna happen? Particularly in the last third, I was kind of playing in my head, well, wait, why would they do this if that would lead to X, you know, kind of thing. But, you know, obviously something it makes it okay, but it is one of those things where I'm like, okay, there's little details that don't always add up, but it's a very, very minute thing for me. This is just the exact kind of weird that I love. It's the same kind of meanness that you'll see in something like Shazam, where even though that's a very fun, mostly light movie, at times it'll get really harsh and really dark. Just imagine that throughout the majority of the film, and with the gore of something like Deadpool and the zaniness that you love to see in James Gunn movies. And I love seeing him unleashed. I really like seeing him not bound to the Marvel formula. Which, even when he was bound to the Marvel formula, great! I love Guardians. I absolutely adore Guardians 2. Even though Guardians 2 is technically probably a better movie, this is a little bit more up my alley. This is a little bit more the weird and the dark that I love and I really, really get into. And with the gore and the surprisingly harsh moments that sometimes look like they're going to be tender moments, and then they just out of nowhere make it just so incredibly mean. I really had a blast with this. I think you can look at the trailer and get an idea if this is the kind of movie you're gonna like. I feel like people that look at the advertising of the trailer and want to see that movie are gonna get exactly what they're looking for. They're gonna get the blood, they're gonna get the swearing, they're gonna get the mean-spirited side, they're gonna get some of the bad taste as well. They're gonna get so much of what they're looking for in this. Goes without saying, if you're looking for an average, I don't want to say average, but a good guys fighting bad guys movie, and love always wins and triumphs and stuff like that. I mean, there's elements of that in there, but this really, really does go super, super mean and super, super weird. So I had a blast. I hope you do as well if you go see it. If you have seen the movie, what did you think of it? Did you think it really came through? Did you like seeing James Gunn just go full crazy? Or did you think it was too much? Do you think he should have pulled it back and maybe it was too much of a mess and didn't focus enough? I love to know your thoughts, because I had a really, really good time, and I love to know if you guys had it as well, or did it just completely do the opposite for you? So that's about it. I'll see you next time. Take care.